You said that you were the oldest person on the plane at 32, other than the pilot.
Yes.
He was dead. The co-pilot was badly hurt. So you ended up taking charge of evacuating everyone just because you got the respect for being older than everyone?
Well, I mean, my reaction, my instant reaction was, where are the fire engines? You would assume that you were that you had crashed hitting the runway or something, and it became pretty clear pretty quickly that there was no response, and there was no response from the flight deck, and I realized that if I were going to live, it was up to me.
But you had a broken back and a broken pelvis.
And nobody was going to help me off the plane. No, as I said, I mean, I walked until I couldn't. I think that had I thought about my injuries, there was a medical student on the plane who said we shouldn't move those girls from. I had insisted that we get them. We were all covered in jet fuel.
You thought that the whole thing was going to go up in flames?
And why wouldn't it? I mean, we were just.
That's what happens in the movies.
Well, the paramedics, when they responded, they were frightened too. They were kneeling in jet puddles of it, and they had experienced that kind of thing happening before. So, but no, I guess authority fell to me just by virtue of my age. I knew that I wasn't going down with their ship, and I was going to get out of there, but I wasn't going to leave anybody behind. And so I started calling out instructions to people who were 10 years younger than I, and they were looking for leadership just as I had been. I was looking for leadership from the flight deck. There was no response. The co-pilot, to get back to what I had started to say earlier, the co-pilot was tended by this Harvard student that had been thrown through the airplane. And it wasn't until I wrote the book that I discovered, in talking to this kid, that he had spent the entire night as he explained it, in intimate contact with a total stranger, keeping him alive. It had tied a tourniquet on him, had tried to keep him breathing, and the heroism that some of these young people displayed is difficult to exaggerate.
One of them, Suzanne, walked all the way through the woods until she reached the highway. Yes.
It's hard to know how long she walked. Even today, talking to her about it, she can't put her finger on how long it was. Whether it might have been simultaneous with her arrival at the airport, which is where she went, not to the hospital. She has to be driven to the airport. It might have been simultaneous with her arrival that the paramedics actually found us. It took them, as I said, an hour and a half just to locate us, and then they had to bring brush breakers in to get to us.
What about that being covered by fuel? Whether you're going to burst into flames or not, that can't be very good for the skin, and it can't be very good for your breathing.
Well, I was thinking that, I mean, as I look back on it, and I've never discussed it with anyone to that degree, in that way, but I think that had we, for example, assumed that the plane wasn't going to blow up, I think, people might have died just breathing in the fumes that were and whatever else was had been destroyed in there.
Although you say they also protect you from bug bites.
Well, I don't know why. All the firemen that I talked to, and I don't know, about 50 of them went into the woods that night looking for us. That's all they remember is the mosquitoes.
Because you tracked down and spoke to most of your fellow survivors and a number of the local fire
yes, I did.
And rescue personnel and nurses who treated you at the local hospital. Had they talked about this with anyone over all the years since?
No, I don't think. No. They of course they didn't have the reason that we might have had. You think that over the years I've mentioned it to people, or people who knew me beforehand would bring it up. For example, if there were a plane crash on the news or something. But no, I found that they had. I hadn't thought of it that way, but they had really kind of, in their way, put it behind them as well. Just another day's work, really, for them.
Now, why do you think the people who didn't want to talk to you refused to talk to you?
Probably for the same reason that it took me 30 years to get around to writing about it. In the initial aftermath of something like this, the natural response of anybody is to get in front of it, to put this as far behind you as you can.
Well, how much can you put it behind you? Did you continue to fly in airplanes?
Yeah, well, I had to do that, or take the train every time I wanted to go to Los Angeles.
Well, there are people who have fear of flying,
well,
and you have
true.
a good reason.
Well, yes, I do. But as you probably know, Leonard, the fear of flying is is really not a fear of crashing as it expresses itself clinically in people. It's pretty much a case of claustrophobia on their part. As far as I could tell, none of the passengers, none of the survivors has refused to fly since. I was on a plane within about because I had to, because there was no other way to get to. I needed a medical appointment in Boston from the Cape where I was living. The only way to get there was to fly, and I was on a plane within 6 weeks of the crash.
I take it still that you don't think much of the airline industry. You've said an airport to you is like a poorly managed casino, and the people running it don't care if you're having a good time.
That's exactly how I feel, and I don't see any change on the horizon.